there's definitely like within the sort of the Chad playstyle or the end game playstyle, there's definitely that kind of like spiral of just like, well, I need to buy the face shield because my gun costs 300k, and so if I will get one tapped with a pistol, that's going to be really annoying, and so
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
yeah,
say I've got to save the gun with the face shield, but then like, oh, but now the gun and the
yeah,
face shield are really expensive. Well, now it means I've got to wear the slick because if
right.
I'm wearing level 5 and I die to,
Yeah,
M995 or something in like 2 rounds, then I'm gonna be really annoyed because my gun and helmet cost so much money. So now I'm gonna have to, and well, I better buy all the best bullets too, because like if I then can't kill the guy with my rounds, if I'm
yes.
only running,
No,
M55A1 and then he's got a slick and then I die, I'm gonna be like, what did I wear all this other gear for if I'm not running M995? And it's just like this endless spiral where you just end up running like
yes.
best in slot everything.
Welcome to ScavTalk, an Escape from Tarkov podcast with a focus on the continued development of the game, patch note analysis, theory crafting, and general gameplay discussion. My name is Church. I'm one of your hosts. I do video editing for a content creator named Airwing Marine.
And I'm GigaBeef, a Tarkov YouTuber helping you guys get better at the game. And welcome back to the show. It's Church. How are you
Yes,
doing? How has your week been going?
been going good, man. Staying busy. Always good. I got to play a little bit of Tarkov. I kind of wanted to play a little bit more, but sometimes just like, do I really want to play Tarkov? It's like it's been a long day or something or whatever, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, like when
Um,
you did play, what did you get? What were you actually doing?
let's see. This
Just
is kind of a
whatever,
problem
or
for me. This is like the problem for me is I notice I'm a very extrinsically motivated player.
Mhm.
You know, like I'm not super intrinsic. Sometimes I can be, but you know, I don't know. For something like Tarkov, I just really need that gratification. And a lot of times that comes in the PvP for late game because that really is the only reward the game can give you.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know,
I
but
think especially solo as well. Like you kind of need an idea of what
yeah,
you want to
that's very
do.
true too. That's very true. I actually was thinking about potentially just playing with other people more, like just even like just helping people, like go into like the EFT Discord or something. But anyhow, I played reserve twice, and I was trying to. I had the P90 actually,
Mm,
and I was actually pleasantly surprised how effective it
it's very
was.
good. It's very good.
I killed all of the raiders, the Glueheart and his
Oh,
boys.
and this whole gang.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing was like a laser beam.
Yeah, I mean it's mental, right? The P90 is insane. Did you go suppressed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's vicious. It really is vicious. Like it's super super good. And the thing about it is that you don't have to do anything. You just buy it. You just stick on the suppressor and then you run around and it's got the same pen as BT I think, but it's got such fast fire rate that everything dies. The
yeah,
50 rounders make a huge difference.
yeah. 50 rounders. The recoil was like very, very manageable. Um, yeah. So I ended up getting a weapon jam, but it wasn't anything. The guy was already dead. It was like I
Right.
was firing it and he was already dead, and it was just that one raider and like the little shack outside of like north building, or I don't know what the call it are anymore, school, whatever. Anyways,
Oh yeah.
um, and then I played another raid and kind of just like I was trying to kill scavs in like the underground under
Mm.
not D2, but
Yeah, the
the
like the
one with all
hangers
the
area.
yeah, one with all like the food crates and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, ended up not happening and just ended up taking the sewer extract, and it was okay. It was okay.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've been very busy. I mean, the last stream, I've kind of been like, living from stream to stream and doing a few bits and pieces. I actually like played like a little bit of just like random offline because it was just like super quick and I could just like
yeah.
run around and just like trying to keep my eye on a little bit because I've kind of been going, I really pushed back doing the Punisher's quest line this wipe. I was like really
Hmm.
focused on doing peacekeeping and all that stuff. So I'm like only just finishing off Punisher now. And I nearly completed it last stream and I'm going to be doing it tomorrow, just finishing. We only need like 3 more kills or something with the SVD. It's like it's so weird how you kind of get used to playing like one way with a particular set of guns, and like this wipe in particular, I've got very used to a certain like subset of weapons, and like the MDR, the P90, and then like moving up now to the MP7 now that I've got like Mechanic 3 unlocked. And then like trying to go back to either like firstly like bolt action VPOs was like the first sort of similar thing, and then going to the SVD
Hmm.
is like, obviously it's different, but it's got big recoil,
Yeah.
high ADS time. It's just kind of weird, and you have to like change your playstyle a bit. So like, is another one of those things where like the first couple of raids are just like awful, and then you kill like 2 to 3 to 4 people like every raid after that. It's like very strange. Um, but yeah, no, like it's been good otherwise. I've been working on mostly working on video stuff actually, because I've got
Oh
like,
yeah.
as I was saying last week, so this is going to be like my last weekend here in this
Hmm.
room. So I'm gonna have today and then tomorrow's stream, and then that's it. I'm gonna be off. But I'm not gonna have any internet until Friday. So I've had to kind of like, back up some stuff or whatever. So I've been busy with all of that
Yeah,
and not been
I
able to
see.
do too much. But there's definitely been like enough interesting stuff going on to like keep our eye on this week in general, which
Yeah.
I've actually enjoyed this like the general news flow. I mean, especially because we haven't seen any teasers or anything yet. I think like the Lighthouse pictures are pretty cool. It's really cool. I think there was the latest couple that come up on Instagram. It's actually I find it really annoying when they put the stuff on Instagram because I don't really have it. Like I do have an Instagram account, but like I don't have it logged in on my PC or anything. I like very very rarely use Instagram,
Yeah.
and so it's like not logged in. And every 5 seconds, like Instagram's one of those platforms where it's like if you're not logged in, every 5 seconds it's gonna tell you, and it's gonna be like you better log in, boy. And I just don't really want to, but. I've got like this snippet snapshot here of like the latest ones I think, which is kind of like the villa. It reminds me. It reminded me a lot of. Did you played PUBG, didn't you? Or did you not play PUBG? I forget.
Barely, like very minimally.
There was
So not really.
on the big deserty map. There was kind of like a villa
Hmm.
on that map, and it kind of reminds me a bit of that actually. It reminds me a lot of that, in fact. It's got kind of like a similar vibe to it, but it looks super cool. I imagine from the sort of the speculation stuff that we've seen so far, there seems to be like a few key things. I mean, obviously the lighthouse is a thing, but I think people are speculating that potentially it might come in the future, and like it might just be kind of off in the distance because it does seem, we've got pictures of the tunnel, and then we've got pictures of this
Yeah.
kind of like villa type thing, and then the lighthouse doesn't seem to be like anywhere nearby, right? It's like off on the distance somewhere.
Yeah.
And there was one in particular that I was really interested in. It's the final picture of this like grouping, and it was the one of like the really
Hmm.
like dusky setting, and you can see the reserve dome off in the
Oh
distance, as
really?
well as the lighthouse itself, which is
Oh,
like
I gotta pull
super
that up.
super cool. But it looks decent. It's looking really nice. There's like I imagine this is going to be kind of like maybe not, it's not going to be a resort level hotspot or something because it's just nowhere near big enough for that villa to be
Oh
that.
my
But
God, you're right.
yeah, and so I was like, okay, well,
That
this
is
sort of
so
makes. I
weird.
was like, this kind of makes sense, right? Because like you've got shoreline and the tunnel, and then obviously like the top edge of shoreline is reserve, and then you've got the dome, and then lighthouse is like to the side past the tunnel. So I was like, well, I guess it kind of makes sense you can see dome from there, but that helps us kind of orient as well. Although I can't
Yeah.
really see, I'm not sure if the well, you'd imagine the lighthouse is like along the shoreline somewhere.
So I
So
wonder, is the lighthouse accessible?
I actually don't know, and I'm not sure whether it will be to begin with. I really don't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um,
Man, I speculate that it's not to begin with.
yeah,
That will, but even further, I question if it's even in their plans at all to even have it accessible. If it's just like a part of that, lighthouse. There's a lighthouse in distance,
yeah,
reserve. It's a military base.
yeah, exactly.
So
I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, I had always had in my mind that the in-raid trader would be there, and there's the sniper like boss sort of bodyguard kind of thing, and they'd be in the lighthouse, and it's like really hard to assault. But maybe that's completely
yeah,
wrong. And
maybe.
we don't really know. So I quite like these. They're like really detailed, and the villa looks super
I
nice.
I am always impressed with their like I guess you call it level design, like their attention to detail on mapping in general.
Yeah,
It always looks so good, so good.
yeah, it absolutely does. Like the rooms and the worlds just feel they feel real in a way that you don't really get
Yeah,
with. with other games. Like I did actually like I've actually been playing like random bits of like some other games,
Hmm.
just like here and there. I played like half an hour of Squad the other day, which was like because people say Tarkov is like miserable, but honestly I find Squad like really really miserable sometimes, just because like it's so barren and when you're losing, it's really rough, and the time to kill is actually shorter than EFT,
Yeah.
and your character is very hard to control, and um, you can't like it's by design. We've talked about this before. It's by design because you can't be a one man army and you have to work with a team, and it's like
Hmm.
your character and movement and everything like that is kind of nerfed to like stop people being like kind of too good and making the teamwork more accentuated. But it's weird coming from EFT where you can like run around so quick, and obviously we've got inertia and stuff, but it's still never going to feel like Squad does. But even just the environments, like in the buildings, and they're just like all empty. It's just the whole thing is completely empty. There's not even any like
Yeah.
textures or anything anywhere, and then you jump back into EFT and there's like litter and rubbish and things that make it feel as if like it has just it was lived in or something, and then it's just been left.
Yeah.
So the level design is fantastic, and it's not surprising it takes them so long to make the maps, if I'm honest. But it looks great. We've got like terror group banners and stuff around the villa. I don't, I think that USEC was in Shoreline anyway, so I imagine there's some link there um with the lighthouse area, and maybe it's kind of like the boss's hideout. I don't really know. Or like
Yeah.
the big heads of USEC or something, because they were like owning the resort before it got emptied out, I believe, in the law. And
There
so
was something interesting.
yeah.
Um, so if you go to their Twitter and you look
Hmm.
at today, which is Friday, the most recent screenshots, there's one of like the tunnel. And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but there's a little character standing in the tunnel. It's sort of a T pose. Like it basically is. It really is a T pose. Um, I wonder if they're like hinting at something. Like,
Well,
is that?
I don't know. To me, that just looks like a mannequin from Interchange.
Oh, that could be it too. Yeah,
That was
that
what I
could be it
thought
too.
immediately. As soon as I saw it, I was just like, "Oh, that looks like a mannequin from Interchange." There's the ones at like the bottom of the escalators that just like scare the living crap out of you whenever you see
Yeah,
them. Yeah, those ones. They're my favorites. Not really, but yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I hadn't actually looked at it in like super detail. I didn't realize how detailed it was. It's like a proper like high
yeah.
res screenshot actually, which is pretty neat. Um, yeah, were there any other like super super good pictures? I think because it was just like the series of things that they showed out. Oh yeah, there was another thing that they showed which was different, but so it's like a different topic, but like more stuff that they're kind of like hinting at and all that kind of stuff. Which is they
Yeah.
had like a bunch of revolvers or like and shotguns with like the revolver style um
Yeah, yeah.
like shells in them and stuff. So that's neat. And they've been talking about putting those in forever, and saying that they've
Yeah.
not worked out how to actually make it. And so I think they've said that they've kind of made this work now, which is quite good. So they can have like double barreled shotguns, or they can have revolvers and all this kind of stuff, which will be super super cool. So getting some like more pics of that is very nice. So
I just want to say double barrel shotgun is scary to me because now they say it's supposed to be a really crap gun. Like just really like a pure scav gun.
apparently,
But I'm still of the opinion if it's like I don't know how they work in real life, but typically in most games it's as fast as you can click twice because that's like the advantage is like you got like the pump shotgun that has like high capacity, but you have to manually there's like a maximum fire rate. For
yeah.
the double barrel, you have like small capacity, but you have like as fast as you can possibly click in that and within those two shells. So I'm like kind of worried if it's gonna be like, just like Magnum Butt Central, like the cheapest budget shotgun kit for like, 9,000 rubles. And it's just like bam, the guy's legs are just disappeared.
Yeah, or like you just put like express in it or something. I'm not sure exactly whether like normal shells fit in a double barreled. I don't know what type it is or
Yeah.
anything, but if it's like regular shells, you have like express buck or something, and they just go ba bang. You've got like 18 pellets flying towards your head in like rapid
Yeah.
succession. Oh God, it's just
Yeah.
like not my head eyes hitbox.
Yeah, because that's the other thing too. I think there's even some double barrel shotguns, like the mechanical feature is like you have a single fire, trigger, and then you have some sort of mechanism where it's like it fires both in like very rapid succession.
Yeah,
And I'm not really sure the details on that, but I don't know. That's interesting
it will be.
nonetheless. I'm excited
It will be
for
interesting.
that.
Yeah, there's always like new and novel ways to kill people very, very quickly, especially in the light of the way things are going with the mechanics, right?
Yeah.
And black limbs and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so and then right, there was another thing actually that they posted that I wanted to like specifically talk about,
Okay.
which I thought was quite cool. And let's actually yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this now. I think let's talk about this now. And this was the statistics that they
Oh
had
yeah.
from the Scav Brotherhood event, which I thought was kind of cool. I like it when they put this stuff out. And I actually spent a bit of time, like, there wasn't as much as I thought I'd be able to get out of it. Because, like, last time, I think they put up some, when they said, like, the end of the wipe stats and stuff. And you could kind of like work out
Right.
a few different bits and pieces. But there was, there's some takeaways from this thing. So they've like given you like a snapshot of like certain stats. So like raids played like 11 million, raids played as Scav 3.5 million. So people play PMC 68% of the time and 32% of the time play
Mm-hmm.
Scav, which I was already kind of interested in to begin with because I actually went back and looked at the old stats, and that's actually the same as what people were doing at the end of last wipe. And I thought that initially I was like, oh, that seems like quite low for Scav. I thought people would play Scav more. And then I was like, well, maybe people didn't play as much this, on this event potentially because like some people couldn't play it or like if you had like less than one karma, you get
Yeah.
destroyed and stuff. But I don't think it really affected what people did looking back at, the previous stats. Because you'd expect more people to play PMC as the wipe goes on, would be my
Right.
guess. So I was kind of surprised that it was so high for like the PMC ratio, but that's okay. And then there's like the interesting stuff, which is like PMCs killed by PMCs like 3.2 million. So I actually wrote out some of this in like a little thing to just try and like
Oh, did
figure
you?
out. Yeah, I tried to like figure out how exactly like what this means and whether we can take anything away. So basically, like if you're going in as a PMC, you've got a
Mm-hmm.
44% likelihood of being killed by another PMC, given those statistics, and a 1.3% of being killed by a player scav. So people who complain about like player scavs and reserve and all this kind of stuff, it's actually very unlikely that you'll die. I mean, this is across all maps, but it just kind of shows the disparity between these two things. You're in any particular raid. I mean, this doesn't really say anything about encounters, but in any particular raid, you're like almost 40 times less likely to be killed by a scav than a PMC, which completely makes sense, right? Because PMCs kind of know where
Yeah.
you are, and a lot of fights happen at the beginning, and bumping into scavs later. Like we've talked before about the experience of being a player scav and being unable to find PMCs even because you've no idea where they are, and players kind of know like there's a timing and a rhythm and a tempo of when you're entering the map, where the hotspots are, who gets where first, and that kind of thing. And there's always a big fight in some of those hotspots to begin with. Maybe a bit less so now because of the dynamic loot stuff. Um,
Arguably, that might be the reason why people are complaining is because it is such a rare event that it is that even more annoying.
maybe, yeah, that's true. That could be true. Um, and so what this means though is that effectively, like you flip it around and you say, okay, well, if 45% of the time uh, you die to PMCs or player scavs. That basically means that like roughly on average, the average survival rate is like 55% for the player base, which is kind of
Huh.
interesting to sort of know that as like a
Yeah.
number. Now, what that doesn't take into account is PMCs killed by AI scavs because they don't actually give you that number.
Right.
But I'm willing to bet that that number's not that high. It's probably quite low as well, as the player
Yeah, I
scav
would think
one.
so.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't think, every now and then you get like head eyes by a shotgun and it's annoying. So I imagine it's probably in the same like 1 to 2% region. So that probably puts like the average survivor rate at like 52%, something like that, 53%, something in that region, which I thought was kind of neat. Um, and then, yeah, so then like player scav survivor rate is actually a lot higher because they actually give you that number just straight up, which is like 60%. So player scav survivor is 61%, which again makes sense because there's less people when you're running as a
Hmm.
scav and people aren't killing each other anymore, really. Like some people are, but people aren't really killing each other that much. Um, and then there's like a whole set of stuff. I actually had to really think about it because they've got like 5 categories, right? Player scav survives, Player scavs killed in action. This makes complete sense. Player scavs MIA, which I was like, okay, well that's like when you fail with the timer. And then it had like player
Right.
scav run through, which I was like, oh, does that still exist? Because even if you spawn straight into factory and run straight to the exit, I thought that if the timer wasn't less than 10 minutes, then you got a run through. So if it still says like 10 or 10:30 or something on the timer and you went to the exit, then you got a run through. But that's not actually the case because I tested it this week. Um,
Well, it's also it's I think it's either 7 or 7:30. It got lowered a while ago.
Oh, okay, fine. And then the other one was like player scav left the action. And I was like, what does player scav left the action mean? And after thinking about it for a while, I was like, it's when somebody actively disconnects from the game.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know really what the ramifications of this are, right? Because like player scav MIA is like 1.8% of all scav runs end with like people missing the timer. And the run through is like 0.3. But player scavs left the action is like 2.9%. Which either means people disconnect a lot on their scavs for some reason, like maybe they spawn in a place they don't want to be and they like just DC, or they get a bleed on and they know they won't make it, so they just DC, whatever. Like I've never done that, so that kind of
Yeah.
behavior seems weird to me. Or it shows actually like there's some really serious, horrible disconnection problems for a lot of people. And they're like 1 in 30
That's
raids you
true.
disconnect as a player scav and actually leave the action and can't be bothered to reconnect. Something along those lines. Because people are more likely to reconnect to their PMC raids and continue to play through. But if you get disconnected to your scav run,
Right.
maybe some people just think, screw it, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because there's no stats for like left the action for PMC, so it'd be interesting to know. Because if it was similar for both, that would mean that people were getting disconnected actually quite often, and that would almost like
Right.
signify a technical issue. Whereas like if player
Yeah.
scav left the action was like 3% and PMC players left the action was like 0.2, then that would be like, well, people just get DC'd and then they can't be bothered, or they're actively disconnecting on their own for whatever reason. I can't really think of like I don't think I've ever disconnected as my scav. I can't really see why you do that. So
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're really efficient or min-maxer, and this is probably a percentage within a percentage, it's definitely not that whole 1,000 people that left that disconnected.
yeah,
Or sorry, 100,000. But I could see the case for, I'm not going to make it to this extract. I got a broken leg. Might as well just disconnect. Or yeah, I mean
yeah,
that's probably the only thing I could think of. I don't think you would, like you said, I don't think you would disconnect for like a run through. That wouldn't,
yeah.
because you
Or
would just
like
wait,
I
right?
didn't get anything and I'm miles from the extract and I can't be bothered. Like I didn't find anything good. I'm just gonna just
Yeah,
leave and just play PMC instead. I don't really know.
I don't know either.
It seemed kind of strange.
That would that would be interesting to see the PMC numbers though, to sort of see how the ratios stack up.
Exactly. And then the final one that I was like, okay, we're gonna like try and get something out of this because I like having this kind of snapshot because there's always more that you like. I don't like just reading the face value numbers. I like thinking like, okay, is there anything else that we can like pull out of this? That we can like if we get given
Hmm.
like a little string, we just just keep tugging until we get something. So I don't know. I wanted to do like an estimate of how many people are actually playing. I mean, it's very rough. But you just have to make some assumptions and you kind of get to a number, right? Because it's like the event was lasted for like 5 days. And we know from the total
Mm.
raids and the scav raids that there were 7.5 million PMC raids. So there's like about 1.5 million PMC raids per day. If we just
Wow.
say it was I think it was over 5 days. I looked at my fence message and it was like, event starts and 5 days later the event ends. So I was like, fine, we'll just count it as 5 days. That's fine. Like, how many raids do you think the average player plays per day? Like the average player. So there's some people who only play like one or two, but then there's some people who play a ton. So I was like, maybe four. Maybe four is a good average. I feel that like the tail is quite big on this distribution. You've got like a
Hmm.
lot of people playing like just a couple of like raids. And this is people who've like played a raid because somebody who didn't play any raids on that day just doesn't feature in this, right? So it's like of the people that played a raid, how many did
Right.
they play on average? So I'm saying, well, maybe let's say like four. I thought three to begin with, but I was like, maybe that's like being too low. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
so
I think
I was like
higher
four.
is better.
Yeah, so I think like four. So I was like, okay, well, if people play on average four raids, then that means that there's like about there's like 376,000 players a day, and then there's roughly like three broad regions around the world in terms of time zones, which would mean about 125,000 concurrents, very, very roughly. If all people are playing in the time zone kind of sit at similar times, and it's probably a bit more spread out than that. But it's like I thought that was interesting because it gives not the right answer, but like the ballpark number. And obviously you can see
Yeah,
like as you
yeah.
tweak the assumptions, like things change a little bit, right? So I reckon we're probably in sort of the 100 to 150k concurrence or something based on those figures. And I don't think this event is really anything above average in terms of bringing people into play that wouldn't have played otherwise. Um,
Yeah.
so that's the thing. You can kind of like, fiddle with the numbers and like just sort of get yourself like a range because we don't get these stats from BSG. So I was like, well, maybe we can use it for something, get a little estimate because we know that they had like a really big player base at one point, and it's kind of drops off as you go through the wipe, like, and then it spikes up again. So I don't know. Maybe that was interesting. I thought it was interesting, but that's just me.
There was one stat that I was missing that I felt like was probably the stat to have in there, and that would be AI scavs killing player scavs.
Hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not in there, right?
That isn't in there, no. Because
Because that was kind of the thing, right? If you're a bad scav in this event, you're KOS by AI scav. So I feel like you would want that number to be like that. Kind of seems like the important data point for me. For me, at least, I don't know. Or I shouldn't say the important, but one of the more important
I
point.
wonder if you could. I wonder if you like dive even deeper in whether you could actually get that number because it's like scavs, AI, and players killed by PMCs. But we know the number of player scavs that were killed, so then we know how many regular scavs were killed, and then like scavs and AI and players killed by player. Oh, but you can't split it out because yeah, you don't know enough of the specifics because it's like scavs killed by player scavs killed by PMCs.
Right.
You know the scavs total, but you don't know how many like. Oh, PMC. Yeah, because they've bundled AI and players together in the
Yeah, and
scav
that
section,
was the
which I thought
question
was
for me.
unhelpful.
Yeah, because that was sort of like, I mean, the change they did was if you're in the negative, well, you have to be -1.
Yeah,
You can't just be like -0.99. I don't think that counts.
I
But
don't
if you're
think so
negative
either.
one below, and scavs will actively shoot at you, and that was the event, more or less. I mean, as far as I know, anyways. So how that affected people, I guess, is like people would be incentivized to not be in the negative. And then if you were in that -1, you hopefully, within -1.99 to whatever, you do stuff to increase your karma rating so you get out of that area.
Yeah. Well, specifically
So
that
I
fence
just
quest that gives you one karma.
right, right. That was like a help me to
Mm.
like, pick me up for those guys. I don't know. I'm not stuff like this. I often wonder what was the method behind the madness. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what was that? And it's it is what it is. I'm sure they got something. Maybe they. I don't know. I don't know. I have more questions. The data only gives me more questions. So
Yeah, I feel like they just like put this out just for interest from the player base rather than necessarily
yeah,
some stuff themselves. I mean, they've got like all the data on all this stuff, so I don't know. But it is a shame that they didn't split that out, to be honest, so that you could see a bit more about like the player scavs, because as you said, that was kind
right.
of the
Because
whole point. It wasn't really
that's
about
the
the
thing.
PMCs.
The title is the Scav Brotherhood event results, but you don't have the thing that you changed that was the events in the data. You just have generic, mostly generic data. I mean, I'll give them points for AI scav, player scavs, killing player scavs or PMCs and stuff like that. But none of that really mattered. Like I don't know. I feel like you would want to split out that group of AI versus player scavs. Then again, would it even matter? Would it even matter?
I mean, not really,
Honestly,
but I'm just interested in any data, to be
I guess
honest
it
with you.
wouldn't really matter. Yeah, I would have liked to seen it, just to
Yeah.
see like, okay, how effective, like, could you really like what if the number was like 4,000, and you could like evade the AI scavs super easily based off, the data that we see. You know what I mean? That'd just be
Yeah.
nice to because I didn't get to play the event. I don't know if you got to
No, I
play it.
I
I
didn't.
don't
I
know.
didn't. I didn't at
Yes,
all.
I don't know what it was like. I can only speculate.
Well, the most important stat on there that they actually wrote down, which you couldn't get from any other source, which says
Hmm.
player scavs killed scavs AIs and other players 41% more often than normal, which was actually kind of surprising. Sort
Yes,
of.
and that's
I mean, that
Yeah,
implies
and
that there's a lot of people who have negative karma that had to like fight off a bunch of
but
AI
that's the
scavs or whatever. But it
thing.
like it
What
infers that and implies, but it doesn't tell you exactly like how much.
but wouldn't you want to know? And maybe this was my point that I was wrongfully recalling is that I want to know, were they killing, like I wanted to see the players that were killing AIs and the players that were killing players,
Yeah.
right? Because the player killing the AI, you're basically defending yourself, you know.
Yeah.
The player killing the player, arguably you could be defending yourself, but you also could just be, I guess for the AI, you could also trying to get a come up off some AI loot. I don't know. I thought it would have been nice to split those two categories out
Yeah.
just to see.
Yeah, it would have been. But yeah, I always love it when they send this stuff out because it sort of sends me into like an analysis overdrive to try and like
Yeah.
glean as much information out of it as possible. I was a bit like, oh, because I was like looking at it, I was like, this is kind of impenetrable just because they've like combined two things together and there's not enough info and you can't break it down properly,
Yeah.
which I was a bit like, oh, whatever. But something is
Scraping the
better than
data.
nothing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sieving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's,
that was
that's fun
that.
stuff.
Which was yeah, the stats that they brought out, which is good. I guess this week, what changes have they actually made? So they've changed the loot rate. They've added, a bunch of extra loot chance to things. I think there was on the community podcast, people were talking about like the fact that graphics cards don't spawn in computers anymore. Like I don't think I've looted a whole bunch of computer towers. I don't think I've ever seen a graphics card for like a long time. And they like
I think it's bugged.
chance of that up. Yeah, I know lots of people do think it's bugged because they said, oh, it's, a 0.5% or something. It's just like 0.5% though is like 1 in 200. So you'd see it. And like tons of people who play the game a lot haven't like seen any for ages, right? And loads of people who haven't seen any for ages. And so you'd think that somebody would have seen it. So I don't know. They've bumped that
Yeah.
number up anyway. Um, and also bumped up the killer and also Rishala, I believe, spawn rates up a little bit,
Yeah.
which I understood about. I don't know why Resh got involved in this, but the killer one kind of makes
Right.
sense. It's a little bit actually
Yeah.
similar to what we were talking about previously. And there was some, there's always some threads on Twitter about people complaining about this, that, and the other. And there was there was like a semi interesting one about labs and about like labs loot being nerfed and that kind of thing. And, you know, I can't remember, I think it might have been a Dan excerpt one where he was talking about the loot and stuff and someone was arguing with him
Hmm.
about it. And it was just interesting because as he pointed out, BSG have said, well, the loot's just not in the same place. It's now distributed across the map in general. But like from what we've spoken about this before, is that unless you do something to like the spawn rates of loot, that is a nerf because people don't scour the whole map and people don't loot like the map doesn't get completely
Right.
stripped of loot. So by redistributing it around, it is actually a nerf to loot. So if you want it to kind of feel the same, you do actually have to put those rates up on the high value stuff. So I'm actually quite pleased that they did
Hmm.
that, to be honest. And it's exactly the same thing for Killer, because if Killer spawns anywhere, you don't know where he's going to spawn, then you do
Yeah.
need to increase his spawn rate because it's just a lot harder for any individual person, if you're looking for him, to actually find him.
Right.
And it
You've
also,
added more.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't. I can't think of the technical jargon, but you've added like more opportunities and kept the encounter chance the same. I
yeah,
guess you know.
yeah, exactly. Because like, do people? I mean, I don't mean interchange. But when I play interchange, I tend to kind of do specific sections and then leave. I don't tend to like go through the entire place because
Yeah,
that
because
usually
you.
results in my death. To be perfectly honest with you, if I go like, yeah, we're gonna go idea, we're gonna hit that bit, then we're gonna go to the back, and then we're gonna go into the mall for a bit, then we're gonna go down into like Ollie, like I'll be dead by the time we get to the back of Goshan or something. Um, but yeah, so I normally just do my bit and then go. And then that's the same thing. It's like, do you always go into the car park? No, not necessarily. Like, are you always going to go into the front of Idea? Not necessarily. And that spawn rates map, I think, did we talk about that last time? I can't remember whether we talked about. I think we did. Then we talked about the spawn rates map um, on Reddit and about how there was
Oh
kind of a
yes, yes.
25%, 25, 30% chance of him
Yeah.
spawning where he does normally. It's like you have to go to all those areas if the spawn rate doesn't change to encounter him the same number of times. So exactly as you're saying, you're increasing the sort of the number of places that he could be without buffing him. It's kind of you're not going to see him as much in each raid, or individual people won't see him as much in each raid. So I'm glad they did that. I don't know why Resh got caught up in that, to be honest with you.
I don't know either,
I
but
really don't know.
I feel like
I feel like his spawn
they've
is enough.
lowered and raised it. Like we've kind of come full circle in the way.
Yeah.
I can't say for certain, but it feels like at one point he got buffed to like 38% and he got lowered to like 28, and then now we're coming back towards that 38%, like whatever the numbers are. I just feel like we kind of gone, which maybe they're looking at some numbers and based on their decision off it. Maybe they're just doing it just for the sake of doing it. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And just see what
I don't know.
happens. The one thing though that I would rather them change than any of that is to make sure that he has the golden pistol on him, because that weapon,
Every
like
time.
I finished that now, but like not spawning 100% with that when he's already got like a percentage chance to spawn
Yeah.
in the first place. When you're doing that quest, that is miserable, especially when you found him and killed him like 2 or 3 times and he doesn't have the gun. It's awful. That's really that feels really bad. It feels terrible, honestly.
Yeah. Arguably though, it is kind of a good thing because it is linked to a barter. Like when you think about that pistol, like I always felt like it was a missed opportunity because it's not like it's golden. Like, you think it's like, oh, is this 007 Golden Eye? Like I'm about to just be where's Oddbot at? You know what I mean? But it's just yeah, it is linked to the barter. So I guess if you increase if it was 100% spawn chance, then you would like be because it basically is a barter item for all intents and purposes. Like it's just a cash item.
It is, but
But I
they
understand
should
your
just
point.
unlink that or something. I actually forgot it was a barter item because I think it's always too
Me
expensive because
too.
there's not enough on the flea ever. What's it even barter for? Is it an
Yeah.
armor or something? I can't remember.
It's a rig. I think it's a tech. It's like four of those pistols and like four chainlets, or maybe it's four gold chains. It's kind of like a bad
Yeah, I don't think
barter.
anyone's ever really used it, to be perfectly honest.
Because
But
to my knowledge, you usually get the pistol for like what it sells to the vendor
mm,
off the flea market, like 28,000 rubles. I'm not too sure, but
yeah,
anyways. Yeah, because now I think about it, like let's say there was no flea market, that would be a really long grind to get four TTs, because I think it's four golden TTs. And then, I guess that's the grind there. So you maybe only get an armor like once every month or 2 weeks, depending.
and then you just get head eyes by a shotgun
Yeah, it's like,
shotgun
yes, I
scav.
just finally grinded for this amazing tier 4 armor. Oh, I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that there's kind of a balance to be had, because I've thought a lot before about hardcore and about like removing flea and all this kind of stuff, and like
Hmm.
with the level 20 flea experience, it has kind of like not changed my mind completely, but it's sort of put it into perspective of you'll be playing the game a lot without like I think some stuff would need to be tweaked decently to give you the chance to get some of the more higher tier stuff, because I've been looking at like moving up to potentially doing some face shields on factory and that kind of thing at this
Yeah.
stage, because I have Peacekeeper 4, but I don't have the quest for it yet. And I'm like, well, I haven't seen like face shield be lootable or anything. Like there's so much stuff in the game that you just wouldn't ever see. And so I think that would need to be you would need to like be it's not in the state right now where if you just strip the flea away, I mean clearly it's been balanced for the flea, so that is kind of why. But if you just strip the flea away, I don't think the game's really like in a state where you could just play it hardcore and have a good time as an ordinary player. Like you have to be Pestily or someone um, to be able to like get through. But you're just not going to see like you're not going to see most of the items. I think that was kind of my point. You just won't see most of them, which is kind of a shame. Like you want the game to be balanced in such a way that things are rare and exciting when you do find them, but
Hmm.
not
Well,
not so common that
that's
they
kind of
happen all
like,
the time. I just feel like some of the stuff is
y-
like way too rare. Like you just never ever see face shields like in boxes or whatever. It's like I don't know. Maybe it's just
yeah, but
my experience
that's
of loot.
also like what makes it rare
It
is the,
is.
you know what I mean? So it is a very like balancing act there.
Yeah.
Like yeah, in like some ways I think you would want, I don't know, you kind of want like the power of the rarity to be like aligned. Like you wouldn't want a very common item to be like the most powerful thing, because then it just undermines every other item you put in the game,
Yeah.
you know. But then if it's like super rare and it's useless, then it's like, wow, I just found the really rare useless thing. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to have like a bit of a nice curve there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the issue. That's probably one of the actual biggest issues, and that I've come to realize about EFT is because of the permanent loss of gear finding rare
Mhm.
items doesn't feel as good as it does in traditional RPG games, because when
Right.
you find something, you know that, well, you take it in, you're risking it, and then when you die, it's gone. And with people having roughly 50% survival rate ish, you might get, you if you're lucky and it's going to help you with your
You might
survival
get
rate, maybe you might get 3 raids out of it or something, and then it's gone. So
yeah, yeah.
there's like a big sort of diminishing value on almost anything that you find and pick up and use, which for me kind of removes some of the excitement. It's like if you're in an RPG and then you get like a really sick drop or something, you're like, well, I can use this for like the next, you know 3 hours of gameplay or something, until I then the stuff in the next area is kind of like, surpassing that, or 3 4
Right.
hours. Like it depends on where you are in the game. um
Sure.
but I do find that a bit strange about EFT sometimes, is that because of that temporary nature, it's just difficult, because I mean, firstly, it makes people like hoard stuff in their inventory, and they're like, "Oh, I'll use this when I'm
Mhm.
doing important stuff," which is fine. But sometimes
Yeah.
you can obviously take that too far with like proper gear fear. But then it's also like, as you were saying, you don't want a common and cheap item to be really, really powerful, but you also don't want like the expensive or rare stuff to be really lame. Otherwise, no one will use it. And I think like the gear doesn't give you, no, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but the gear doesn't actually give you enough of an advantage in some ways to justify the rarity, if that makes sense. Like you find a face shield, like I'm talking about like it's a level 3 face shield, right? It's going to stop you
Yeah.
from getting randomly one tapped in the head by people with pistols and scavs with buckshot. And very occasionally something like mid tier, like a BT ammo, might not go through it or something. So we're not talking anything crazy. And so if you only found one, like one in however long, you'd like wear it in a raid, and then it wouldn't save you, and you'd be like, okay. And it's just, I feel like that's not particularly exciting. I don't know. Maybe just the way that like gear is balanced, because they want it to be, you know, punishing still, and anybody should have the ability to die. No one should be immortal. Sort of undermines like the rarity in the first place, because it's like, is are the high end items powerful enough to justify the rarity, or is it just they're just rare and not that great? Like they're better, but they're not that great.
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated thing because when you talk about face shields, like the counter to that is another rare item, rare being used loosely here. I mean, I really wouldn't. That's kind of the thing. It's like when you have different power. I don't know. It's there's kind of multiple things going on, but like one is like you have different levels of power, right?
Yeah,
And then you have different levels of rarity or accessibility, and kind of in that same vein, you have like the actual costs to get the item. Like if a level 3 face shield was like 1,000,000 rubles, then it's like that's just it's not
yeah,
worth it. You know what I mean? But if it was like 3,000 rubles, then it's like, well, there's zero reason to run it. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's like
So
I think
it's
they're like
like
150. Like the multi ballistic face shield is like 150 off the fleet. Or I mean, I haven't
USD.
actually checked. I haven't checked recently, but
Oh,
they were like
oh,
125 or
euros.
something.
Hmm.
Which is like not worth it, to be honest.
Yeah,
Is it even
that's
worth it
like
from Peacekeeper? I don't know. They're like 420 rubles, dollars or something. I think they're like 60K, or like 50, 60K equivalent. They're
I mean,
expensive from Peacekeeper even.
to me, you're paying that much to not die, to die by scav ammo less often, and also you're paying for a percentage chance to ricochet a bullet. So whatever that number is, let's say it's 5%. That's the premium you're paying for, and just like,
Yeah. And then
and that's
and
kind of thing
yeah,
where you have like these. That's like the old meta before the Mosin nerfs when the Mosin came out. I mean, I wasn't playing at this time, but I played a little bit when the Mosin was around, and it was like, if I'm sure you can remember, it was literally naked with a Mosin.
yeah,
I mean, you were like, that was like, dude, for 60K, you got maximum value. The ammo was cheap,
exactly.
the gun was like super effective. Uh, God, those days were crazy thinking about it, man, because it really was just like you go factory and either it was a juice guy or it was a guy with a Mosin or a complete noob with a pistol. You know what I mean? It was just like there's you kind of just like kill all your progression in a sense because it's just like either you go for the insanely good stuff or you go for like this huge power level that's really cost effective or really common, and then you have like nothing beneath that. You know what I mean? It's like you it's totally not worth going a pistol. You might as well just buy the Mosin, you know, and it's like it's totally not worth getting that Mosin with like a suppressor. You might as well just spend the extra 300,000 rubles for the classics armor or whatever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's kind of weird.
There's definitely like within the sort of the Chad playstyle or the end game playstyle, there's definitely that kind of like spiral of just like, well, I need to buy the face shield because my gun costs 300k, and so if I will get one tapped with a pistol, that's going to be really annoying, and so
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
say I've got to save the gun with the face shield, but then like, oh, but now the gun and the
Yeah.
face shield are really expensive. Well, now it means I got to wear the slick because like,
Right.
if I'm wearing level 5 and I die to,
Yeah.
M995 or something in like 2 rounds, then I'm going to be really annoyed because my gun and helmet cost so much money. So now I'm going to have to, and well, I'd better buy all the best bullets too, because like if I then can't kill the guy with my rounds, if I'm
Yes.
only running,
No.
M55A1 and then he's got a slick and then I die, I'm going to be like, what did I wear all this other gear for if I'm not running M995? And it's just like this endless spiral where you just end up running like
Yes.
best in slot everything. Um,
I think that's actually true, and there's a reason behind it because it's just like I don't know. Maybe if no one else was doing it, like if you were the only one doing that, then it wouldn't be worth it because then the loot you're getting is like not valuable,
yeah,
and they could what I mean. Like I don't know. In some ways, you kind of want to be on the same level as everyone. Like if you're a mid
exactly.
tier guy, you want to be fighting other mid tier guys so you can get more mid tier stuff. If you're a high tier guy, like and you're looking to profit off PvP, then you want to be fighting other high tiered guys. Like I don't know, it's kind of interesting
It is, yeah,
because in
it
some
is.
ways, like they invalidate each other. And they like cancel out each other almost.
They
Like
do,
the reason why you're gearing up is for the other guy that's also gearing up. You're
exactly.
not gearing up to be more powerful than the guy beneath you. It's kind of it's interesting.
Well, the one weird thing that I find is that there's like two ways that I see it, and one is about
Hmm.
survivor rate, and the other is about like economy. Right, and it's like these two things are
Yes.
different. So when you're going like Chad
Yeah.
gameplay, you're like maximizing survival rate, which is definitely
Hmm.
not economic most of the time
Yes.
anyway. But you do maximize your survival rate, right? And it's like if you were gonna
Right.
if you just had infinite money or Tarkov didn't have rubles or anything, you just buy what you want. You'd obviously buy all of the best gear all the time because it's gonna have the highest chance
Yeah.
to protect you against rounds. It's going to give you the best chance to kill people because the lowest recoil and like highest ricochets and like not getting shot in the face and all this stuff. And so that's the thing. And when you're like balancing those two things up, and it's also dependent upon your skill level too, because that's kind of why as people grow with confidence, then it's sort of like these things go hand in hand, right? It's like when you're new, it doesn't matter if you're wearing all the good stuff because you don't know the maps, you don't know how to traverse
Yeah.
around, and people will
Yeah.
shoot you from places that you don't even expect or just don't see at all, and then you die regardless of what you have. And it's like I think we've spoken again previously about this whole the gear kind of gives you that like leg up in a what would otherwise be an even fight, and
Right.
two people who both know where each other are, they both jump out pre-firing and like guns blazing at each other. And one guy's got a P90 and the other guy's got an M4 with M995 in it, and a slick
Hmm.
on, and the guy with the M4 wins. And
Hmm.
those fights, the gear tips in your favor, but like, running through somewhere and then somebody just like, cracks you with a hunter with M61 in it, and you just didn't know where they were and they were lying in a bush or something. In that fight, the gear doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what you're wearing then. And the new players are more on that kind of, getting surprised. They don't know where they're getting shot at from. They don't know where people are likely to be. They don't know the tempo of the map. You kind of like
Hmm.
figure out like where people like to go and like where's dangerous, where's not, like where the sight lines are, because you just
Yeah.
can't take it all in when you first start to play. And so that's the thing.
For
It's like as
sure.
people get more experienced or whatever, you kind of like your gear then kind of scales like with your confidence as well, and like your how good you are too, because the better you are, the better gear you can run because the less times you're going to die, which means that it is actually more effective and more economical to run that good gear because you're winning more fights in general. So it just kind of makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. I'd be intrigued to see how the game would get rebalanced for hardcore. But I mean, they've said they're never going to take the flea out, so we'll see how that ends up at some point. I mean, I know we talked before about hardcore and all this kind of stuff, but it
Yeah.
would just be. I think there's like some people's criticisms of it that I have taken on board, which is that it would be a shame to not see some of the stuff because some things we don't even see now, like. T7 thermals and that kind of thing. So they're like in the game, but no one ever uses them because there's a pricing point at which they are used sometimes. But like, how much are they now? Like 14 million or something stupid? Like they're like way too much. Like you could make them 5
Yeah,
and you still wouldn't see them. So there's a scale here where if you made
right.
the T7 thermals, if you made them like 300k, you'd see them all the time. If you made them like
Probably.
if you if
Well,
well, I don't know, maybe. I'm not sure. If you made them
because
like
they have a downside.
they definitely do, which is actually I actually quite like. I like the fact that there's downside.
Right.
I love,
Yeah.
mixed choices. Those things are always
Yes.
fantastic. Because it's like, oh, well, you can have this very, very good thing, but take away this very good thing as well. So really have to choose. That
And
was
for those that don't know, it's you can't with the T7 thermal. You basically any optics are rendered useless. You can't see through them. Same for glass. You can't see through like glass. Like a couple wipes ago, when it was in the wipe, we took T7s to labs, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's glass. I can't see him through that." It was kind of fun. But
Yeah, and I
all right, what were
don't
you saying? Sorry.
think you can even like not even just can't see through optics. I don't think can you actually ADS at all with them?
I think you
Or you
can,
can,
but
but you just can't see.
it needs to be iron sight
Right. Okay. I wasn't sure whether you could ADS or not, but I guess that makes sense that you can ADS, but you just can't see anything through it. So
for the wait. Well, if it's a optic, then I'm not sure what happens. I think you can ADS, but you can't see
yeah,
anything.
that would make
I'm
sense.
pretty sure for iron sights it works.
It does definitely works for iron sights. It definitely works for irons.
Okay, okay.
Um, but yeah, it doesn't work for other optics. But I guess like at some point they will stop us from even ADSing because that's the idea behind the face shields at some point, I think, as well.
Yes.
That you have to be using very specific stocks, otherwise you can't
And that would be interesting.
use a
Let's
face
see,
shield.
like in the current state, that would just be perceived as like a direct nerf, you know? Because it's like
Do like what face shields, alt-ins, everything like that.
yeah, because it's not really well, maybe not Altons. I don't know. But it's not really like a trade-off because I guess the balance is kind of skewed. I don't know. I don't know. It- yeah. Anyways, what were you saying? I want to let you finish your point.
Oh God, I've completely derailed myself now. No, but I was talking about the T7s and just saying there's a point there's a price point where
Yeah.
you see them occasionally. The price point isn't 14 mil or whatever it is at the moment.
Hmm.
That is
Hmm.
not the answer, right? If they're never used ever,
Yeah.
except for at the end of the white when people are burning money, then
Right.
that's not the right price point. And so it depends on really whether they want them to be seen in the game or not, or whether they want them to be if somebody does get one, they're super rare, or whatever. But I think people just like try to sell them or something. And like, this is kind of the issue that people don't want to use this stuff because they can just sell it, which is fine, right? And as a player,
Yeah.
you definitely want to do that. But if there
Yeah.
was no flea, then if you got this stuff, you'd be like, well, I'm not just gonna have it sitting around. And you wouldn't necessarily. Sometimes
You're forced
there's
to
something
use it.
there's like a psychological element that I think sometimes is missed, which is that when the flea exists and you can go and see the price of it on the flea, that actually
Hmm.
scares people and makes them sell it more.
Yeah.
If like the flea didn't exist, like if you were playing
Right.
Tarkov like single player or whatever, and you didn't even
Yeah.
know what the price of this stuff was, it was just this resale value to the traders, you would actually probably use some stuff more because you're like, you don't even know what the value is out on the market because there isn't one. And so you wouldn't be like
Yeah.
scared to lose it because that's what I think people like get scared to lose it because the replacement cost of some of this stuff is so high. Um,
Yeah.
but it's kind
I mean,
of
it's definitely
artificial. Like unless you're just going to sell it straight away, then it doesn't really matter.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely true in like other games similar. Like I think of like Rust. You get an AK, but you're scared to bring it out because if you die, you know what I mean? And like if your even if you're of a squad, if all your guys get wiped, like the chance of you getting that AK back is gone, and it's a rare item, and it's a really good item.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's interesting because it is kind of like let's keep it in the base for when we need it, like when we're getting raided, then we bring out the AK. It's like yeah, it is very interesting actually.
Yeah, the psychology of that is quite funny.
Yeah.
Ah, um, moving on completely. There was an
Okay.
interesting thing that I saw, which was about the potential for death cams, um,
Okay.
where And Nikita got asked, I forget because there've been so many different like casts and things recently. I forget which one it
Mhm.
was on, but he was asked about like death cams and that kind of stuff. And I think he said that he was open to the idea, but only in arena to begin with, and then seeing like how that works and then move it backwards. So there's not something that's going to happen like anytime soon
Yeah.
at all. But I believe he's open to trying it out in whatever format arena ends up being in. I'm actually very interested to see how arena works out. Um, Again, like when I was playing squad the other day, with my mate, and he was like, oh, can you imagine though? He was like, can you imagine if this had Tarkov's gunplay in it as well, or like just the Tarkov like detailing within squad? It's like, yeah, that would be really
Hmm.
really quite cool. And like some people don't really like factory, I know, because it's not really like the proper Tarkov experience. But I do think that like I think it's quite clever having arena. I really do because there is a place for people who want to play the game like that, right? An arcade, more like an arcade shooter, but with like the
Right.
Tarkov like mechanics and gunplay and stuff. I think it's very smart. So I'm actually quite intrigued as to how it will play out because I never really thought
Yeah.
of myself as like much of an arcade and arena like Tarkov player. But the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe this could be really cool actually. Um, and especially as a test bed for things like the death cam and stuff, because it's like as we said, like a less serious. I mean, it'll still probably be as serious because we're going to be more kind of competitive in some ways, but it'll be
Yeah.
less serious in terms of like immersion. They won't need to be stringent to the
Right.
law and that kind of thing. They can do other. They can have
Potentially.
kill
Yeah.
cams. They can do things that aren't necessarily wouldn't happen in that world. Whatever. I know there's tons of stuff that breaks that in the actual game anyway, but that's sort of the general premise that they work off. So it could be interesting to see what they do with it, and if they then are able to use any of that stuff to port it back, like maybe a death cam or something that you get mailed after the raid or whatever, and it's from a different perspective and stuff. Because it wouldn't necessarily just have to be like head cam or whatever. You could have like CCTV or
Sure.
something. I don't know. Just depends
Yeah.
really. But I think it's neat. It's neat that he's thinking about it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Arena supposed to be a standalone game now? Is that
Yes,
the okay?
yes, that is
Interesting.
true. So it is going
See,
to be
I wonder.
standalone. Whether EOD people have to pay for it or not was still in question. He said yes, they did at one point, and then I think
Yeah,
there was
that's what I
also another thing
thought.
saying, "Oh, we're still thinking about it." So, I mean, my opinion on that before was that like they have to be very careful before they make that decision about making EOD people pay for Arena because it's a bit of a dick move, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's totally well within their power,
I mean, it's definitely well within their power. And there are many things that are well within their power. Whether they should do them or not is another question. So I don't know.
Sure.
I'm not sure. Like if it's going to be very different, completely separate, then maybe. But I
That's what I
think,
wonder is
yeah,
because
I think they have to understand that the goodwill of the player base will not stand for it not working in that case. So if they make everybody
what
pay
do you
for it
mean?
and there's like
And it's like
desync
broken.
issues and broken stuff, people will
Yeah.
people will actually just like go crazy, and the game. I
Yeah.
just don't think it'll work, and people will just not play it anymore.
Because like here's the thing. If it's basically just a game mode, then you're not really playing for a game. Like it's the exact same engine.
Yeah,
It's like if they sold Call of Duty Modern Warfare and then they sold separately Call of Duty Modern Warfare Zombies or something. You know what I mean? It's like why couldn't we just bundle this in? And then the other question too is like, they're working on inertia. To me, inertia and arena, I don't know how well they mix with each other. I think you could make the argument. I don't know because it really just depends on what inertia is. You know what I mean? Is
yeah,
inertia strictly movement? Is inertia like going to affect ADS? Is inertia going to like actually the way of your gun's going to like affect your arms? You know what I mean? Like there's so many possibilities. I don't know.
yeah.
Um, but I almost wonder like, is it going to be like an old version of EFT? Without like the inertial model? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I still think it'll be okay because there's inertia in like CS and in Modern Warfare and
Yeah.
in PUBG and stuff. So I think it'll be okay, depending on obviously depending on how it actually gets implemented.
That's the grand question. Is like how are they? Because it would be interesting to try. I don't know if I would like it, but like a game like what is it called, Cordy or Quap or that browser game
What?
where like yes, that browser game where you control like the character running and it's
My God.
you know what I mean? Could you imagine like if they got a one-to-one perfect implementation of what it's like to be wearing, I don't know, 35 kilograms, moving around, sprinting. Everything felt like you were moving, just felt
Yeah.
like one-to-one to real life, and it would just be like that would be interesting to play in like a first person perspective. I don't know if I would like it, but it would be interesting.
See, that's the thing is like people don't know whether they're actually going to like it, right? And that's always the big
Yeah.
question. It's like it might be realistic, but is it even playable? Do people actually want to do that? I don't know.
That's the thing, dude. It's
That's the
like
thing.
I'm always scared because I'm starting to feel like BSG wants to go almost beyond realism and into like simulation
Mm,
sometime. And that's where I'm like a little scared because now I feel like we're kind of getting out of like game. You know what I mean? Like when you go to like uh, those simulations of driving a car. I don't know if you've ever seen them. I think I've seen them at like States NASCAR. There's like this NASCAR where I live, North
yeah.
Carolina. There's this famous NASCAR driver, yeah, Dale Earnhardt, and there's like this NASCAR center a couple cities away. Anyways, when I was younger, I went there because I have some family over there,
Okay.
and you sit inside of like a NASCAR
Hmm.
thing, but it's like it's all robotics and hydraulics, and then it's got like these huge TV screens around
Okay.
you, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like you're simulating as if you're a NASCAR driver, but it's like it is kind of a game, but the purpose is to like simulate what it would be like to be a NASCAR driver, like so it's like it's I don't know, it's like it's not really a game, it's more of a simulation.
Mm,
So it's like that's where I'm kind of worried is like because I would say they're definitely have a lot of game stuff in there, like the RPG elements. That's like XP leveling, the trading stuff, the menus, like all that's like very gamey.
yeah.
And I guess the gameplay, there is certain gameplay elements that are like very gamey as well. Like the movement right now, I would say it's like very video gamey.
Yeah.
Um, and there is like some advantages too. I've been thinking about this a lot, so this is all coming out. Is like when you go for like realism, it's very palatable for like a new gamer, right? Like you think about when you play, I guess like a game like Tarkov. If you ever shot a gun before, you already have like some knowledge going into the game.
Yeah.
Whereas if you play like, you know, League of Legends or Dota 2 and you're a new gamer, like what I mean? You just have like zero understanding of how to like actually play the game or what stuff does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you have to go through this model or like this loop where like you do an action, the game takes that action, run it through the rule sets, and then it sends you some feedback and something happens, and then you're like, oh, when I do this, this happens, and now I can sort of like build off that knowledge. Whereas like a very realistic game, you already have like I think of DayZ too, is I had a hard time knowing what to do with certain stuff because I'm not like a survivalist.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know I could like I did not expect I could literally take my bare hands and break twigs off of a bush. It was like, wow, that's actually pretty cool. The game didn't tell me that. I had to look it up. Um, but that's pretty cool. Like it's like very, if you were like a survivalist guy, you could almost assume that, oh, this is a survivalist game. I should be able to do this. Yes, I can. Okay, then I should be able to do a lot of things. It's kind of an interesting game development thing because if you make something completely abstract from like reality, then it's like, man, you have to really like a science experiment. You do something and something happens, and then you have to figure out what that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very much like Dota 2, right? And you mentioned that a second ago, but
Yeah.
that's like, the way the mechanics of that game are like completely backwards when you're first starting and it's a bit of a tangent, but like when you first start playing that game, that's crazy, right? Because you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm gonna go into this game and oh, there's some like AI stuff, and I'll like go and kill them, and it's just like, no, 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 you're not supposed to kill them. Like they're supposed to like come towards you, and you're like, what is going on here? Like
That's
nothing
so
makes
true.
nothing
Yeah.
makes sense. I distinctly remember being extremely confused when I first started playing, just being like, I don't understand
Yeah.
anything of what's happening here. Like the whole thing is completely unintuitive. Like the things you think you're supposed to do to win actually are detrimental. Which is it's not even like it is actually probably the definition of counterintuitive, right? It's like the things that you think are going to make you lose, actually the things that are going to make you win, and vice versa, which is like really odd. It's a very weird thing. So like, yeah, there's definitely some of that. I find like EFT's funny, and there is I do think it has a bit of I do think it has a bit of an identity crisis sometimes, and I think that may be a combination of many things. A combination of,
Sure.
Nikita's vision, but has to be Nikita's vision is like executed by a team of people all doing different stuff.
Right.
So that's one thing. Secondly, is just like technical limitations. It started out very basic and they're adding stuff as time goes on. So there's some things that
Yep.
are very gamey, as you said,
Hmm.
like, well, surgery kits, and I always bring up surgery kits and that kind of thing. They're very
Hmm.
gamey, whereas something like the weapons system is very simulation. That's actually the sort of almost the definition of simulation. It's probably the most simulated thing in the game. They like have like the 3D print like models of this stuff and like, are modeling everything,
Yeah.
right? It's a model. It's actually just a model of weaponry. And Tarkov's probably if they keep going the way they are, it's going to be one of the best sort of like weapon modeling platforms out there,
Yeah.
despite being a video game. But then you've got like the armor system, which is very gamey, as it is now, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got
Yeah.
the potentially replacing that with something that's more realistic. So I do find that like in quite a few ways, it has some elements that are super gamey, some elements that are super realistic, and it's like they say that they want super realism, but then they don't always put that in, and some of it's placeholder, and we don't necessarily know what's going on, and so it's like it's
Yeah.
complicated and it's difficult. So I know what you mean about the whole, are they going for simulation or not? And there's a balance. It's just a balance
Yeah.
that we have to
Because
hope
that's
that
the
Nikita has in his head.
yeah. Because it's like that's kind of the thing is going back to like the simulation versus like gamey slash realism, all that type of stuff. Like you take a real life thing like sprinting and carrying a lot of weight,
Mm.
and you put that into a game, that could have like very interesting decisions and outcomes depending on like what's all supporting that system. You know what I mean? That's like there's different elements of that you can sort of import from life into a game. You know what I mean? And then there's also some stuff that's like just completely abstract as well. Gosh, I wish I could think of an example on the spot. Um, well, we'll say like okay for Rocket League because it's something that's on my mind. You know, it's cars with rockets on them. It's not realistic. Maybe a bit of science fictiony, maybe a bit of science. I don't
Yeah,
know. But it makes for a very interesting scenario for a game.
yeah,
And there's all these cool mechanics that they added that you can do with it. It's like a spin on soccer, basically.
yeah.
It's so weird when you think about
It
it.
is
Like
weird.
what?
It is
Soccer
weird.
with cars and rockets? That makes zero sense. Yeah.
But it's quite interesting
Um,
because it's hard because the turning of the cars is not like that easy, and that's kind of what makes it kind of interesting. Right? There's skill in just
yes.
controlling the not character, but your player. There's skill in that. It's not like a person that can just like turn and whatever. You've got to actually drive forwards and turn and fly off stuff. So it's like it gives an interesting mechanic. I don't know whether this is in the same vein, but there's like things like in DayZ, which is quite realistic in as much
Hmm.
as it's in
Hmm.
a zombie world, but it's like a realistic model, notwithstanding the zombies. But I think in that, if you like work out the speed that you travel at, I think like movement speed is actually just really hard in a lot of things, especially if you
Yeah.
have a realistic world, like a realistic looking world with the movement speed being realistic. It basically means that people travel incredibly slowly because walking and running is actually really not very fast, especially when you have like things like stamina and stuff. And I think in DayZ,
Yeah.
because the map's very big and vehicles are few and far between,
Hmm.
your run speed is like double what a human can actually achieve or something. And it doesn't feel weird because it's in a video game, but it would just take you absolutely forever to get from one side to another. It's like the run speed is very slow in squad, but in squad there are vehicles. Um, and in EFT, your run speed is also very, very quick. So it's like, where do you draw that line between this is just this is just painful to play. Like there's a difference between like
Yeah,
there's a difference between punishing and just like this is just the experience of playing this game is painful. And you know, detracts from what the game is aiming to do. You know, it's like, well, this is less about struggling to achieve your goals and achieving a great victory and whatever. It's just like I'm actually just struggling to move from one place to another because it's just, you know, upsetting. So it's you got to make that
yeah.
balance, right? It's always movement's
It's
the
in,
tricky one.
it's interesting because I actually preferred vanilla Daisy movement, where the more stuff you have, it lowers your like maximum stamina bar, and I
Mm,
think even like your top speed. But like I would argue that modded Daisy with infinite sprint is way better, more fun of an experience.
yeah,
Um, because you can like I don't know, you can play more, you can get into the action more. You know what I mean?
exactly. You
It's
can just
like
play more. You experience more stuff.
yes, um, that's just interesting because it is sort of like this game. It's and I guess that's kind of my point is like sometimes you can just set realism aside or not even consider realism, but you're just trying to create an interesting scenario. And it's like, how do you take that rule set or whatever you came up with and like put it in the game? You know what I mean? And it's like you could like if it's like realism, then you can't really like and it's unrealistic. You can't really put that in there, but maybe you could be like, okay, well, see what happened is like there was this virus and it got really crazy. The CDC came in and whatever, and then it spread. And turns out everyone's zombies. Like, okay, this is like I can suspend my disbelief enough to
Yeah,
like get to that point.
exactly,
Um, it's all interesting.
exactly. Did you want to talk about that video that you sent me before we finish up as the last topic?
Um, I actually didn't get to research it, so I'm gonna say no. Maybe we save it for
Okay,
next
okay, that's
week.
completely fine. That's completely fine. Well, it's yeah, we'll leave it. I'm not gonna say anymore. I'm not gonna say anymore. We'll
Yeah,
talk about it next week. We'll talk about it next week. The
because I
other
did want to.
you wanted to like
Yeah,
give
go
a
ahead.
bit of a dive into it. Okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that I had to talk about was that there was more talk about, and I left this till last, about the secure container and about
Okay.
how Nikki was thinking about having an animation to access said secure container. Doesn't fix any of the problems that we were talking about, really. But
Where was this at? Was this on the community podcast or somewhere separate?
I don't know because I've watched like 3 or 4 different summaries and none of the original source material. It might have been in One Peg's video. I can't remember.
Because I wanted to say, if I remember correctly, it was less of an animation and more of like a progress bar.
Okay, I
Like
mean, I
think of
guess it doesn't really matter. Like, however they do it, that you have to like open the case, or you know that it takes time to put it in, or whatever. Right, you're kind of
right.
vulnerable, I suppose, when you're using it, which is
Yeah, yeah.
the ultimate point, giving you a
Yes,
downside
yes.
to it, which yeah doesn't help with the mechanic, but it does kind of help with some of the practicalities in Raid of people running around hoovering stuff up and just and then dying. Um, you know, you won't be able to just like instantly pop it in, and you're quite vulnerable when you do, right? Which is better. It's better. Doesn't
Yeah,
fix it, but
it's
it's
better.
definitely better.
I just it's just more stuff, more band-aids on top of a leaky. Eventually they'll get it to where there's only a little tiny leak, a little tiny leak, and I
And then they
guess that's
can band-aid that.
I and then when they, you know, put in something new and then it's like, "Oh god, maybe we should remove some of these bandages because it's now affecting this other thing that we introduced." You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
like there's kind of room for that, my worry.
yeah, definitely. I don't think they're going to get rid of secure cases though. I don't,
No, he said he's not getting rid of them.
and they're
I
adding
don't
another
I don't
one.
want them. I don't think I want them to because I like the concept behind it. Like for me, it's one thing that stood out unique to the game. Like this is very unique.
I'm surprised to hear you say
I like it.
that.
I just don't like how they function. You know what I mean? Like I like the concept. I just think it needs tweaking.
Yeah.
is
Okay,
all.
okay. I
Yeah.
think that's sensible. I'm intrigued to see where they put this Omicron container. You know, the one which is like Gamma plus another three slots that are separate, and so it's like Kappa Light. So you have the same amount of space, but you can't put all the stuff
Yeah.
in that you'd like. It sounds to me like, the Serve 12 goes in the bottom, and then you've got
Yeah,
your
that's
other
what I was
stuff. It's
thinking.
like the
I was
little
thinking
Serve
like
12 hole.
docs case and like maybe dog tag case or maybe just ammo.
Yeah.
I've always thought they should do that, have like restrictions and different cutouts because it still makes it a little interesting
Yes.
um, when you're trying to build an efficient kit going into raid. I think that makes that more interesting having restrictions. But yeah,
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I hope that they put it somewhere kind of in like the finish all traders. Maybe they put it at like level 50 or something like
that's what I'm
that. Because
hoping.
that's
It's
like a
like
nice goal for people to like be able to reach.
yeah,
Because I was always of the opinion that I didn't actually mind them putting Kappa like way out where they did. I just was a bit sad that they didn't add another thing in its way. Um, just because it's nice to get those like stepping stone jumps. Maybe you have to complete all the quests and get to level 50, and then you can get this new case.
yeah.
But it
As
has
a
relieved me of having to do all the stuff.
as an extrinsic player, I now I'm starting to question if I would even go for it. Because it's just basically just more saving
Yeah,
or more
and
money,
and that's
depending
the
on
thing.
how you
Like,
look at it.
would you? Okay, this is an interesting question, I guess. Would you be more inclined to go for something like the Omicron or something like a golden dog tag, which is like purely cosmetic? Is that actually better?
I'm not. I've never really been a cosmetic gamer. Like skins. I'm just like I could care less. Like
Like
I'm.
same
That's
here to
just how I
same here
am.
to be honest with you. Like the completely
Now
same
some
here.
people.
But
I have some friends that are just like where's mom's credit card? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
I gotta get that new skin.
yeah. Some friends who
I'm
have to
just
kind
not
of
one.
like they've got their Steam key in like a bank vault because their account's worth so much.
Yeah, seriously, dude. Yeah, I'm just not one of those people.
I'd
So
quite like to have a golden dog tag. I do say, and to be able to like maybe there's a difference for me, like working towards it and achieving it, and then people seeing
mhm.
it like when you die or something, or maybe like an armband or
That's
whatever.
what I was,
Like that to
they kill
me
you and
is
they loot
better.
you and it's a golden dog
And they're
tag.
like, "Hey, look at this guy." I
Yeah.
kind of like that though. I kind of like the idea of that. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's kind of cool.
and I'm not like a paid cosmetics person, but like I don't mind. I definitely wouldn't be against like working towards it and having like
Hmm.
goals to like get to a cosmetic. Like I'm not against them at all. It's just I don't like paying real money for stuff in games normally, and I'm
I was
usually quite opposed to it. But like working for it
e-
in game, I don't mind, and it would be kind
even
of interesting.
even for me working for it, I usually just don't even care.
Yeah, I mean
Like
that's fair.
I would rather put my time working into something that's going to give me like 0.001% advantage. You know what I mean? Now sometimes there is a case where like that cosmetic is like camouflage, and you're like, okay, this actually matters. You know what I mean? I could get
Yeah, that might
pay to
work.
win.
You gotta get like a ghillie suit at level 60 or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Stuff
Yeah,
like that. But if it's just like oh, it's a color palette swap, I'm like, I could care less. I literally could care less.
yeah,
Well,
that's fair. That is fair. But I think it would have been nice to do something. I still think there's huge value, and this is going to be the last thing before we wrap up, I think, unless you've got anything else. But
mhm.
the I really still think there'd be huge value in a prestige. Like people have said it so many times. I don't really see what that would take away from the game. And also, it would give you kind of like two waves of people, right? People would always be it wouldn't be so much like, oh, I'm starting like 3 months late and now everybody's just level 60 and just I'm just dead every time. It would give you that kind of, some people have come up, they've come through, they've got to the top level, they've got to wherever they need to, and then they reset prestige and like maybe you either like, yeah, get the gold dog tag or whatever. And people would do it for that. And then the thing to start
Oh
again,
yeah.
because it's like it kind of like gives you that, or maybe yeah, you can't get Kappa until you reset or anything like that. It'd be quite nice to have like the players who aren't as quick or aren't as good coming up through the ranks and having some of these top players get a handicap by coming back down the bottom and coming back up
Yeah.
through, right?
No,
It
I
would
see
sort
what
of
you're
rebalance the
saying.
player base a bit. I think it would I think it
I
would feel better for everybody. It'd be more of a challenge for the guys at the top to get less bored, less quickly. And then for the
Yeah.
people who are in the middle, they have like more of a chance in the fights because they're maybe have better gear, even though they might not be as good. And so I think it'd be cool. I really do think there's much to be said about like a prestiging system.
No, 100%. Honestly, when you put it like that, it's like, maybe for me, it would need to be something more perky, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you get an extra row in your stash or something. I don't know, whatever. But
Mm.
um, yeah, no, when you put it like that, like, because right now there is, like, you're not really incentivized to wipe your account unless your incentive is because there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
Like, which is almost like that's not really a good reason to do. You know what I mean? It's, I don't know. Like you're almost saying, I'm going to wipe my account because the game is not good enough to like meet. I don't know. But
Yeah. Whereas this could give you like
yeah,
an
because that
actual
way,
reason.
yeah, exactly. Now you have some extrinsic uh reward for them to be like, oh, here you get a golden dog tag. Oh, here you get, a now you can buy this Ragman tracksuit or whatever, something,
Yeah.
something. And then, like you said, it's going to cycle people back through, which I think is way more interesting. It's almost like a wipe cycle in and of itself.
Yeah. And
That
it's
would
staggered as well. Like
it'd be
the faster people
right.
get to it, like, and maybe people could do it a few times or something, but it's like as people get
Yeah,
there, some people will, it just pulls some people back down to the bottom, which I think would be
yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah. No,
I think
hundred
it'd be good.
percent. I think a lot of people like it. Honestly, I know I would probably try it at least once to see what it's like, and maybe yeah, and then if more people are doing it, then to me it makes the experience even better. So
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
Because you have lots of varied people, and it's like sort of helps to fix that thing of like everybody's level 40 plus and everyone has access to everything
Yeah,
good, and I just die every time. It's like,
it just gets really stale.
yeah,
I mean, I know some people like that part, but I mean, for me, going, it's kind of crazy because you go like maps like interchange, especially now that there's a lot of value perceived in the map interchange. Everyone's like above level 50 except for like one guy in a lobby. And then you go customs and everyone's like kind of all over the place. Sometimes some raids are high levels, some raids are just all low levels, but it's kind of just like varies so much. Whereas like the later you go on wipe, it's just like, man, I remember last wipe I would go interchange. Dude, there was literally everyone had slicks. One guy had a slick in his backpack and that sniper in Mark 18.
oh
So he had a
yeah.
backup slick and a slick in his like I was like, okay, dude.
Or just to like insurance for
Okay.
the one he's got on and then wear another one.
Combat swap, dude.
That's
Like he
insane.
he tanked, yeah. It's just like what? I don't know. It's just like, yeah, but it's like, yeah, everyone's super high level. It's like, it's kind of predictable. Anyways,
Yeah,
it'd be cool.
yeah. Yes,
Cool.
it would. Yes, it would. Cool. Well, anything else? Anything else you'd like to go over
No,
before we wrap?
I think we'll save it for next week. Um, I think we've reached our time in the show. It was a good show. I had a lot of fun actually. I'm glad that we went the places we did. You know,
Good. I'm pleased.
yeah,
I'm pleased. There was actually, yeah, I've been a lot more diligent recently in actually writing down the things that I've found interesting, and it does help a lot because I find like I tend to forget what happened. I'm not very good at remembering like when
yeah,
what happened. Like my brain just doesn't really work that way. But like if I have a crumb, I can kind of like from there I'm like,
yeah.
oh
You
yeah, and
can
this and this and this and
recall.
this exactly. So
Yeah,
I just need to give myself like a little reminder. I'm like that with almost everything. Like I have like the thing for for the raids, and I have like notes everywhere, and like, I have to write down everything, and like in my Google Calendar, and it's like as soon as somebody says, "Oh, let's do this at this time," and I'm just like in the calendar immediately because like I will definitely forget otherwise. It's like I have to have
yeah,
everything written down. So I'm kind of using the same approach for this, and I think it's it's better for the topics. I think it's better for the topics. So
yeah.
I'm glad that you've had fun. I always have fun on this, so it's good. It's good stuff.
I usually just open up YouTube and go to Airwing. It's like, what videos I work on again? What was in this? What was the news for the? Oh yeah, that's right.
uh,
Cool. Um, yeah. So what are we doing for our guest coming up? Did we get a final word on that?
we
Possibly.
don't know. I think so. I think we are set, but I'll triple check. Uh,
Triple
but
check.
I think we're set. I've managed to break
Okay.
my cameras. But yeah, I think we're set. He seemed good to go from the last discussion that we had, and enjoyed
Cool.
the idea of the topics that I had proposed. So
Very good.
look forward to that one, 1st of October. Hopefully, if everything gets confirmed.
Cool. So we're keeping a surprise then.
I don't mind. I actually don't mind.
Okay.
We can keep a
We'll keep it a
surprise.
surprise.
We'll keep it a surprise for
Yeah.
now. Maybe we'll tell everyone next
Yeah.
week, but we can keep it a surprise for now.
Stay tuned for that one. It's Nikita. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my goodness. I'd actually be scared. I would actually be scared to have Nikita on this show. I'd be super scared.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it'd be cool. It'd be
I'd
cool.
be like, have to do so much prep. Honestly, I'd be just like, but that's the thing. I'd put like, I have to take it proper serious and be like, it's less like, me in church just hanging out and like doing our thing and talking about some Tarky. And it's like, all right, we're gonna like properly lay this out to make some good content and make him not just think we're, I don't even know.
Yeah, I'll come in with a cat suit on, like a furry costume.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Just completely embarrassed Giga.
Oh, I would die, I think, just on stream and just fall off my chair. Oh my
It's
goodness.
funny.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, tuning in. Really appreciate everyone. Check us out on anchor.fm/ScavTalk. Send us a message. We'd love to hear from you guys, and maybe you get to feature on the show. Any topics or any interesting ideas you have, please send them our way. We'd love to hear from you guys. Always love connecting with our listeners and viewers over at YouTube. And with that, we'll catch you guys next week.
See you later.